Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christopher Dyer. I'm the co-chair of the 50th Anniversary Planning Committee of, actually not the Planning Committee, 50th Anniversary Committee of World Pride. It's my honor to welcome you to an evening of LGBTQ plus heroes. This is our fifth event that we've held. We have a phenomenal panel of speakers that we're going to briefly introduce. If you want more information about these fantastic heroes, go visit www.capitalpride.org/evening heroes or something like that. Anyway, you all probably read up about them before starting. So, in no particular order, we have Earl Fowlkes, who is the founder of Black Pride, not Black Pride, but the Institute of Black Pride, if I'm right. And he was also the co-chair, or prior to that, he was the executive director of Damon Ministries. He's also a member of the DNC LGBT caucus. And I've had the pleasure of working with Earl off and on for the last several years, and he has been an outstanding mentor to me and helped me a great deal. Mara Keisling is the founding executive director of the National Center of Transgender Equality. Mara did an amazing thing for me when I was the LGBT director. She came in, she doesn't remember this, and she did the best representation of why bathroom access needs to happen. She's also, which is very important since we are celebrating Trans Visibility Day later, she has been phenomenal. She's also gotten a honorary degree from my alma mater. And then Lettie Gomez, who is one of the founders of Yego. I have not had the pleasure of doing a lot of direct organizing with Lettie, but I've also organized with a lot of people who have been taught and mentored by Lettie. So I'm phenomenally excited to have her on the panel. This is an amazing panel. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Robert York, to finish the other introductions.
Thank you, Christopher. We will keep this brief because I know we want to hear about the history and get to a lot of the questions for each of our panelists, and really thank each of you for being here, and thank all of those online and people in person tonight. Our next panelist is no stranger to DC, and that's Brent Miner, founder of Team DC. And if you go to Miss Adams Morgan, you will also probably see his alter ego, Barbara Bushwhacker. So we might need Barbara to visit the White House soon. Just saying. Our next panelist is Bob Witeck. So great to see Bob here. When I first moved to DC, Bob was one of the first people that I met professionally and a mentor. And so we really appreciate everything that you have done for our community as president of Witeck Communications. So thank you, Bob. And our last panelist needs no introduction because everyone knows her as the Empress of Pride, the shameless plug of DC. And that is none other than Rayceen Pendarvis. And we really appreciate everything that Team Rayceen has brought to this series of heroes. And I'm going to turn it over to our moderators so that they can get us started into the questioning. We're going to go to Ryan Boss first. I apologize.
Sorry, Robert. And I will now introduce the executive director and the grand organizer of Capital Pride, Ryan Boss.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you all for being here this evening. And I just want to make sure I was on camera, I guess. And being a part of this panel. I'm so thankful for our 50th anniversary committee for making sure that we do a good job of acknowledging this milestone. And I would be amiss if I did not acknowledge Deacon McCubbin and Jim, founders of Capital Pride back in 1975, and they'll be on a panel. Deacon will be in a couple weeks. So what I just wanted to mention, not a shift, but the urgency for us all to ensure that we still show up for not just World Pride here in Washington, but all of our prides around the country and the globe. This hate-filled, backwards reality is not anything unique here to the United States, but it is spreading through the world, and it is our responsibility to utilize our platform here this May and June to make sure that this movement goes global and that we still show up. So if you haven't already, pick up your Washington Post. We launched a campaign today called Hate is No Joke. And this is a campaign to underscore the urgency for us to show up. that our liberties, our freedoms are being challenged. And we cannot let that go without us being visible and being heard, especially for our youth, who many don't know a world without gay marriage. So we need to show them that we have folks here fighting for them along with ourselves. So this is a campaign to raise dollars. As you have seen in the media, the corporate community, though we have still a lot of many great partners, there are those who are still being stagnant, not wanting to be visible, and really going against the purpose of what Pride represents. So we are trying to be creative and raise as much dollars as possible, not just for World Pride, but for the many community organizations doing great work. In addition, we want you to sign up to march with us on Sunday, June 8th for the rally and march that'll begin at the Lincoln Memorial. With that, happy Pride. We kick off on May 17th with DC Trans Pride.
Thank you so much for that, for the World Pride. Are we ready for World Pride? Give it up again. Yes.
Yes.
So I am one of your moderators for this evening. I am Dr. Ashley Elliott, also known as Dr. Vivid, your favorite fun size, pint size, travel size, social media therapist, actual doctor of clinical psychology. I have the receipts to prove it. And my lovely co-host and moderation is Krillios. Krillios, tell the audience about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am Krillios. I am a LGBTQ author, playwright, producer, actor, and I'm also a producer for Team Rayceen Productions. And I'm so glad to be here this evening as we're about to get into this fabulous panel with these fabulous individuals.
Yes, I'm so excited to be surrounded by so much history and so much greatness. So, Krillios, do you want to kick us off with our questionings for these?
Yes, let's. And I'll start right next to me. So first of all, what was your first experience with Pride?
My first experience with Pride was in Philadelphia. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, about 2 hours from here and about 2 hours from Philadelphia. And I snuck down to Philadelphia to go to Pride. It meant a lot to me, and there was nothing in Harrisburg, and I wasn't going anywhere near anything in Harrisburg if there was something.
All right, let's move on down the line, Bob.
As a native Washingtonian, I'm humbled that I'm in the same room with Deacon and Jim, because growing up here, as a year, first Pride was a year after I graduated from college. So like Mara, sneaking was probably what many of us ended up doing, sneaking about, although obviously it wasn't as big a festival as it is today. But I do remember, and I've told Deacon this, is when I went into his shop, Earthworks at the time, I was a kid who wanted to buy the Skin magazine, right? And instead I bought the Skin magazine only so I could buy the rolling papers, because I thought they'd think I was hip and not just merely gay. So there was lots of ways to come out in life, tiptoe at a time. And I came out right at the first Pride here, but I probably stood on the sidewalk and watched it, I'm sure, Deacon. So thank you.
So, yeah. So my first Pride was in Houston, Texas in 1978. And my girlfriend and I went down to the Montrose area, which was the gay neighborhood, I think it still is in Houston. And it was just, yeah, it was just like so eye-opening to see all these gay people proudly marching down the street there in Montrose, Westheimer Boulevard. And, it was amazing because this was a time when bars were still being raided by the police in Houston. Military police were still circling parking lots looking for, especially like at a lesbian bar, looking for the DOD sticker on your car. So to see gay people just outwardly proud about being out was just a really wonderful experience for me.
Well, here we are on the 50 years of the anniversary of Capitol Pride. So my first Pride was going to the very first Capitol Pride. 50 years ago and getting the call when everybody would speak to you, but they would whisper, "Are you going? Are you going?" You be on the phone and you whisper, "Are you going? Meet me there. Don't tell anybody I'm coming." And getting there, and the moment you arrive, seeing folks that you had no idea that were part of the LGBTIQ community, your neighbors, your coworkers, folks you went to school with. And it was such a joy. So out of the fear came joy. So that was the greatest, wonderful experience. And to be present for all the other prides in Washington, D.C. Is always a joy. So I'll pass this on.
My first pride, I had to think about that because I lived in a number of different places before I came to DC 30 years ago. My first pride was in Atlanta, and it was their first pride, I believe. They should be close to 50 if they're not reaching that mark, if they haven't reached it already. But I was at the first pride that they had in Atlanta because I was living there. Then I moved to New York, and then I took a job here in DC at Damien Ministries nearly 30 years ago. And I went to my first Black Pride because I'm not the founder of Black Pride. I want to make that clear. There's one founder who's still left, Ernest Hopkins. But I went to my first Black Pride, and I've never seen that many Black queer people in one space out in the open in Banneker Field. That's the first time I saw that many people, and I was amazed. And then I went several years later. I went to Capitol Pride, and I've been going to Capitol Pride off and on. In between my work at the Center for Black Equity, which is really an umbrella organization for about 50 Black prides. And so I've been to hundreds of prides of all kinds around the world.
Well, this is just a real kind of retrospective here. I moved to DC in 1981, and I think my first pride was probably in 1983 or 4. I remember Laura Branigan was there somewhere and singing, and that was just fantastic. But part of the reason that we celebrated was to relieve during the 80s the pain of AIDS, because that was just coming around. And in the late 80s, I joined a group called Food and Friends and started working there when we were just starting out. And Pride was a very important part of a lot of organizations trying to find volunteers, trying to fundraise. So, I mean, it wasn't just a celebration. It was out of necessity that we had to come together because we found we had to rely on ourselves because a lot of help wasn't coming from other places. And it's sad but ironic or whatever that we are almost coming right around to that same place where we will have to be our own heroes to pull ourselves out of this. But whenever that gets too sad, I think of Laura Branigan singing Gloria at Francis Field behind P Street Beach. Those were the days of Pride.
I love it. You talk about your first, you talk about the first ever, and you talk about things like seeing so many people for the first time and what that meant for you. So I'm wondering, as we talk about that metamorphosis, how has the meaning of Pride changed for you all over the years? And Brent, tag your it.
I passed it down already.
You can, there it goes. It's right back for you.
Sorry. So what was I'm sorry.
How has the meaning of Pride changed for you over the years?
Well, I just said it kind of has circled back, and we've seen everything in between. I mean, Pride has gotten so big. I mean, when we all first were going to Pride, it was, like Rayceen said, almost like, a secret, but it has grown, and I think the acceptance has grown, and I think that's one of the great things about what we have in DC is through Pride, we have greater visibility, and visibility changes everything. People's perceptions of ourselves, people's perceptions of themselves by being visible, and Pride is really just that magnifying glass that helps all organizations, including the one I led for many years, Team DC, to grow, and we all build on each other. So it's just amazing how broad and the spectrum is that Pride has become.
Well, like Brent was saying, that the first prides were really to provide outreach opportunities for organizations that were providing services for people living with HIV. and for service delivery and for prevention. And as Brent said before, we have gone full circle in many respects. The difference between those days and now is that we're the victim of our own success. Many prides around the country have become very commercial. And a lot of people who have been around longer feel that we've crossed the line between community organizing and the community event and commercialization of this event. And I think it's a good discussion point, but I think that the fact that we've been able to mainstream some of our prides and some of our organizing and our visibility is important, but it's always going to be a struggle to find that balance, and at least we have the opportunity to have a balance.
Well, I think you said quite a bit. So if it's changed in any way, of course, we know that pride grew out of resistance. Pride grew out of the need to say that we're here, we matter, and we're sick and tired of being abused. And it was started by trans women and trans men who, as we grow in pride, it is so important that we know the history of prides. And as we grow, sometimes corporations come into play. And as corporations come into play, some folks feel as if the grassroots feeling is gone. It has to be a way that we find an equal balance between grassroots and corporate sponsorship in prides. And that means knowing the history. The importance that every pride should honor the history of pride and make sure that young people of today know the history, because in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been.
So for me, as I look back, like I'm just, my being out since 1977, and looking at the various prides, now here in DC, in addition to DC Black Pride, we have Latinx Pride. It's created opportunities for even more visibility within our community. And I think that, as Brent said, that is visibility, I think, is what has helped us achieve a lot of what we've achieved as a LGBT community in the United States. So the corporate piece, I know that that bothers a lot of people, but I do remember when we were even printing gay and lesbian on dollars to make the point that corporations, businesses were not supporting us, not supporting our causes. And so it is a discussion, I think, that's ongoing, but I think we have to also recognize that, it has been important for us to not just get support from our own government, but support from, businesses and corporations in our own communities, because we contribute to the businesses and the economy. So I think that was what that was the point we were trying to make. And I think Pride is an example of that. And I think the last thing I'll say on Pride is that with World Pride coming to being here in DC this year, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to meet other people from around the world that will be coming here. And I'm really hopeful for this World Pride.
After 50 years, the thing that I think I embrace right now is looking around at Pride and seeing, I think I can't know this, but I think majority of the people around us are not queer. The people who are loving being there and watching, there are a lot of families. And to me, I think what we have brought a gift to the larger community is the gift of joy and exuberance and feeling safe about it and demystifying them about who we are. We have blended in ways that we have to, and we have not blended in ways we cannot. And those two things have given a lot of confidence to more Americans, more of us, to see us for who we are. And I love the fact that I look out on those crowds and I see those families, because I think they are enriched deeply by what they're witnessing, and that was something they couldn't do or didn't do or would never do at the beginning. I just had a postscript because I'm either the culprit or the benefactor of bringing a lot of corporations into our community. And the point I would like to say is that it is a balance. I always have advised major corporations that their voice is not the voice they have to bring to Pride. What they have to try to do is amplify our voices. And we've had the opportunity to work with the Center for Black Equity and with my colleagues at Marriott this year. We've been working with True Colors especially for marginalized queer youth for a long time, and also with Judy and Dennis Shepard. So to me, companies that want to have a spot, have a place, contribute generously as they are doing to World Pride this year, but also put the voice and face of our community in front. And I think that's something they can and should do.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. I agree with everything there, and I want to add a little bit. I mean, a float goes by and it's from a real estate agent or whatever, that doesn't mean a lot to me right now. But the other people who are there, the people who drove in from Winchester, Virginia, or drove down from Hanover, Pennsylvania, and this is the first time they've seen so many out queer people. It's pretty fucking amazing, and that we would provide a space for that is still really, really important. And I think what Rayceen said is important, that you have to know the past to move into the future. But I just want to alert us that we are in crisis. The next few prides are not going to be like the last few prides. And I think we should recognize that Pride might not be the same anymore. It might be like it is going to be in Budapest this year, where the security services are monitoring facial recognition and keeping names. And it might be like it was in Istanbul last year, where the police came in and broke it up. I don't think that's going to happen this year. Don't panic, Ryan. But things are going to change in the next couple years. We are in crisis, and we have to acknowledge that we're in crisis.
Thank you so much for those. The meaning of Pride. That is so important to all of us who've been to Pride, who've enjoyed Pride. That meaning that it has for us as queer people is something that's so important to us, and we've seen that change over the years in so many different ways. So it was great, getting everyone's perspective on how that change, what that change looks like, and what that change could continue to look like as we move forward. Now, please briefly tell us why you became an organizer or community advocate. And I'll start somewhere in the middle. Lettie.
Here's the
Wow. Okay. So in the late 70s, I hadn't been out that long, and I came out and I moved to Houston, Texas, and quickly realized that I was encountering racism in the larger white gay Houston community, some degree of misogyny also, and I met these Chicanos, these gay Chicanos, and they had just organized the Gay Chicano Caucus in Houston, and I fell in love because we were organizing social events, but we were also talking about Anita Bryant and what was going on in Florida. And so it was a wonderful opportunity for me to organize with other gay and lesbian Chicanos around issues that were important to us, and also celebrate our culture, our music. That was very important to me, and that really opened the door for me around organizing later on.
Awesome. Earl.
I started to get involved in Pride after I came. First of all, I lived in New York for 15 years, and New York's Pride was an incredible experience. And I therefore thought every Pride was like New York's Pride. But of course, not every city has 8 million people in it. So when I came to DC, I was surprised by the, and not just DC, in other cities that I've gone to visit Pride, visiting friends in Chicago and Philadelphia and other places, that there weren't the mixture, there wasn't the coming together of the different parts of our community like in New York. New York, you see everything. Everything and everybody comes to the parade, and everyone appears to be welcome. And so my challenge when I came to DC was, first of all, I went to Black Pride, and I started volunteering with Black Pride, and I missed a meeting, and that was the meeting I was elected president. And I've yet to miss any meetings of any election since that time. It was a little unfair, but they needed someone with nonprofit experience, and I had that, but they didn't tell me that at the time. And my involvement with the Capitol Pride was also to demystify the fact that Capitol Pride is not the white pride, it's the community pride. And that we're all trying to create safe spaces, and everyone should be welcome at all the prides that we're lucky enough to have in DC. Most cities don't have as many prides as we have. The fact that we've created these welcome, safe spaces for all the parts of our community is actually a bonus as opposed to a challenge.
Thank you. Let us go to Brent.
Well, I can really cite my experience with Team DC going back to 1990. There was a bunch of us that went to Vancouver for the Gay Games 3. They originally started in 1982 in San Francisco, and it's kind of like, we call it the Gay Olympics, only more fabulous. So, which of course it had to be. And I always say I went to the Gay Games there as a out gay man, and I came back there a proud gay man, because you saw this gathering of people, and it was just a remarkable week of sports and celebration, and everybody just had a fantastic time. And I looked back at our group there, and you could see the seeds here of what this community could grow, this sports community could grow. We had a group called DC Sports that had been in existence at that time, but they kind of faltered. And so we kind of picked up the banner, and we began to organize people. We went to New York in 1994. And then when we went to, we were planning to go to the Gay Games in Sydney, Australia in 2002. And we hosted an event in 2000 at the Australian Embassy. And we said, you remember that? We said, they said, how many people will you have? And we said, the embassy staff, I said, I don't know, maybe 100, maybe. And we ran out of raffle tickets at 450. And they were about to call the fire marshal, but Carol Schwartz walked in with the American flag and said, don't you call them. So, but it just changed us. And what I really saw in that, and of course in sports, you form teams and you form friendships. And these friendships will last really a lifetime for a lot of people. And I've always said, that makes people feel better about themselves. And when you can make people feel better about themselves, they're going to be a better husband, they're going to be a better worker, they're going to be a better employee, because they're happier. And that's something that is why community is so important. And you look at Capitol Pride, I always think about what Ryan Boss says, is that every year is somebody's first year of Pride. Somebody is always, that's their first time coming. You have to keep that in mind, and why it's important to keep it going. But that's why I started. And, from there, Team DC grew to add on more and more. It's been a great journey for them.
Thank you so much. Bob, what about you? Why did you become an organizer or community advocate?
I would say two people formed that impression early in my life. At 16, I was in sophomore in high school here in the Washington area, and I knew I was the other. We all know at some point or quickly or earlier in life. But when you're 16 in 1968, you have no representations anywhere. There's no way to find people like me. But I knew of one man who I'd read about in the paper named Dr. Frank Kameny, and I knew about the Mattachine Society. And I didn't know much about it, but he was the only gay in the world, as far as I knew. He was Pope of the gays, as far as I knew. And I walked 2 blocks to a shopping mall. I took a dime. People don't know what a dime is anymore, I don't think. But I called him up, and he answered. He was the Mattachine Society here. And you're a 16-year-old groping for even what to ask. Where do I find people like me? I mean, you're 16, there's no place for me. But Frank was helpful in every sense of the word. He was very accepting, of course, which I needed to hear from a grown-up. And then he also told me there were 2 things that I might want to read. And they just launched a paper called The Gay Blade. That was the original name. And the other was a magazine called The Advocate. They had just surfaced in America, and I should get my hands on those. And I thought, well, now I know where there's a holy grail to look for. And those were very, as you know, primitive publications at that moment, but they were for us. The other person I'd say is the man who built this house, Stephen Dean. I met Steve when I was on Capitol Hill in the late 70s, and Steve was starting something called the Gay Rights National Lobby, a pointless exercise in one sense, important because our political clout, we had to begin somewhere. But he discovered immediately that no politician would take a check with the word gay on it. So he had to change the name to the Human Rights Campaign from that moment forward, or campaign fund, because it was by and large a PAC. But he had 2 other people working with him, and I was one of his first volunteers, and ever since became engaged with the movement and been grateful forever.
Thank you so much, Rayceen.
When did I first get involved with activism? It is enriched in my DNA. When you have a mother who is a social worker for 40 years of her life, and she teaches you the greatest gift is to be in service. Attending and being active in my community, watching what my mother did, taught me that I must stand for something, because if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything. And learning and having my mother, who was the light of my world, taking me to every march that I could possibly imagine. When you could say I was at the March of Washington, the Million Man's March, the first gay march, the first trans march, the first woman march, to be alive, to be able to say that I've attended all those marches, been involved, been an MC of every pride that we have in Washington, D.C. That's why I'm the Empress of Pride and the Queen of the Shameless Plug. And to use my voice to be a light, to a beacon, and be hope. Our mere existence is an act of defiance. The fact that we can move and maneuver through this world is an act of defiance. When you know the power that you possess, to know the light that you are. For some young child attending a pride, like we said, for the very first time, sees a sea of beauty before them. That gives them hope that they can be brave, they can be bold, and they can be fearless. So sometimes the act of being is just an act of resistance. Using your voice and being kind to others is so important. Yesterday, I had the wonderful privilege of being interviewed by News 4 for Trans Visibility Day and speaking to the importance of uplifting our trans community and our non-gender conforming. But to get a call from your high school teacher saying, I saw you on the news today, lets you know that the work that you do is important. And she said to me, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had a sparkle about you, but to see you grow and walk in your truth and be a light for your community. And then to hear her say, you're considered an elder now, which is a gift. To live as long as I have lived and to see the things that I see and to be involved with young people, to reach out, to have a kinship with young people, to sit here with my peers is a part of the journey that we're all on, that all the we've endured, the no's that we've heard, the bricks that we've taken, the harsh words that we occurred. And sometimes it comes from within your own community. Understand, when you do the work, be prepared for the arrows to come, because they will come. But when they come, it lets you know what you're doing is not in vain. That it's not about the folks who say no to you or the people who do not like you. It is about the work that you do. Because if you change one life, then your journey is not in vain. So that is a part of why I started becoming an activist. In the early AIDS epidemic, in the early 80s, of losing folks, that we knew we had to stand for something. We had to mobilize. We had to rally. We had to get involved. We had to say that sometimes we didn't have what we have today, all of these wonderful organizations. We didn't have all of these things in place, and we had to rally. And we had to do it within ourselves as grassroots organizers and community leaders. We had to do it ourselves. And then it gave birth to understanding why corporate sponsorship is important. Because if you take our gay dollars, you have to support our gay, beautiful, wonderful selves. And then in this time that we are in now, we see the political climate is on a shift more than ever. And now we must mobilize, organize, get involved, and begin to do the work. Because before we were uncomfortable, then we got comfortable. And then we begin to sit in it for so long we thought we had arrived. Now that the chair is uncomfortable, now we're rocking in the wave of change. Now we understand why the work is more important now than ever. That's why that all of us have voices. All of us in this room have voices. And collectively, we can begin to change things and fight against the wave of hate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's close it with Mara.
Yeah, well, bravo. Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess brava. Sorry. I've taken a somewhat different path than folks. I was very much in the closet in most of my life until I was about 38. In the 90s, trans people started coming out in much, much higher numbers than they had been. And it was the internet, which ironically is probably what will do us all in. Can we just admit it's a failed experiment and shut it down? And anyway, as the 90s progressed, I started meeting people like me for the first time. I mean, I had met periodically people like me, but I met people like me. And in 1998, I attended the Southern Comfort Conference in Atlanta, which was essentially a large trans woman social conference. It became different than that as time went on. But at the end of the conference, they had a "What could we do better?" session. And I went and I said, I was pretty terrified when I came in and I was standing at registration. And if somebody had just come up to me and said, "Hey, how you doing? And are you comfortable?" it would have made me a lot more comfortable. And the person, Sabrina Marcus, who was running the session, said, "Okay, so you'll do that next year." And she moved on. So I got myself a Walmart greeter's apron. And I showed up at Southern Comfort the next year. And it was my first real activism. It was 1999. And I greeted people. It scared the bejeepers out of quite a few people. But then I became involved in the advocacy or the activism online. And we all knew we needed an organization in Washington to be advocating for us. And I always say I had the number one qualification, which is I was available. I had also been doing lobbying and some other stuff, and it just felt right to me. It felt like something I could do. And I started meeting people in 1998 who had lost their families. I met a person in 2000 who a judge took away his kids and sent him to jail for conversion therapy, where he had electrodes hooked up to his testicles and was shown pornography. That was only 25 years ago. But people who lost their jobs, people who lost everything, and I hadn't. When I came out, I didn't even lose the family members I wanted to lose. And I just felt like I could jump in and should jump in and did jump in.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So as I'm sitting here listening to all of your experiences and how things have changed and evolved, I think about the current leaders, those who are advocates and organizers who are ready to take your reins, because pioneers cannot pioneer us forever. You deserve rest, lots of rest for what you've done. So that being said, how do you prepare us? What advice do you have for future leaders in this movement? And Lettie, would you mind starting us off?
Oh, I got it. You got it. I got it. Well, first of all, I think it's real. This is lessons learned over my lifetime. It's important to surround yourself with a support network. If as a leader, you can't. Someone said we do it in a village. You do, and so it's important. One aspect of leadership is you can't do it alone. You have to have people that that you support and that support you. And I think another important thing is be a good listener. You really need to listen to people, man. Sometimes it might mean listening more than talking. I think we've learned so much in the movement over the last, 50 plus years about organizing, about organizations, the management of nonprofits. Certainly today we have the advantage of the internet. When we all started, we were still, making long distance phone calls, sending letters. We didn't have email. We didn't have any of what we have today in terms of access to each other almost instantaneously. So I think for leaders today, it's really getting down to the basics of having that support network and really, reaching out to people. I mean, someone mentioned here, I think we're in a time where a lot of people are isolated. So we have to fight that isolation. And especially with what's coming at us right now, we cannot be isolated. We have to come together in community, whatever that is for you, friends, family, or a combination. I think our leaders today have a great challenge. And so it's going to take, having that network, just like, we know each other. And as we were all coming up, we had, support. I mean, I have people in the audience that have been friends of mine for over 40 years that, I met Laura. Did I say Laura? so it's over 30 years ago, so I think it's really important. Like Jose Gutierrez, I've known for many years. I have friends that I've met through organizing and through networks that are still very dear to me. And so I hope those young leaders that are coming up do the same. The relationships that you're making now could be with you for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Earl?
I think that from my experience as a executive director of a nonprofit for over 40 years, I think you have to be intentional about developing a replacement. And we don't have a lot of examples in our community of people who've actually stepped down and passed it on to their deputy. I had the advantage of 12 years ago meeting my replacement. He didn't know he was going to be my replacement, but Kenya Hutton, who I was able to do something that is often not done in our community, is to retire and to have a strategic plan to change leadership with the board support and understanding and Kenyon being capable of doing it excellent. He's done an excellent job in my replacement. And that shows that I was successful because I found someone who was able to do the job better than I could do it. Or differently and better than I can do it. And that's the key. So I think that we have to be intentional. Leadership doesn't just spring out of nowhere. It has to be nurtured, it has to be cultivated, it has to be cultured, it has to be nurtured, it has to be something that both parties understand that this is the route that we're taking. And you have to be, it's difficult to step aside. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was not easy to step aside after leading organizations for almost 40 years, and then all of a sudden you're not leading anything anymore. You have to find, so in the meantime, while you're preparing this new leader, you should have to prepare your own self for retirement and what that looks like, and develop that support system so that you can retire and feel that you're still able to contribute to the movement.
Bob, what about you?
Thank you. One thing in these many decades that I've taken on my own family is the idea that we are so much richer, and I hope young people realize this, is getting out of the silos or the compartments or the identities that we think matter most to us. My brother went to Selma in 1965. Another brother has been fighting for Filipino and labor rights in Hawaii and been arrested 40 times. My sister here in Northern Virginia has been involved in Latino housing and homeless issues for a long time. To me, those intersectional needs and intersectional justice issues are highly motivational. We don't have to play the card of the identity that we were born with. We have to play the justice card. And I hope that the impatience of young people is the driving force because, we have contributed much, but, we have to remind them that you can't keep it unless we fight for it all the time. It's not going to be our legacy. It's going to be our goal, our objective. And we have to teach them those skills and make them as impatient with us as we were when we were their age.
That's Mother Rayceen.
Well, I don't know about you. I'm going to die on a throne like Queen Elizabeth. I'm not advocating that easily. But it is important that we understand when we do the work and reaching out. I look in this audience and I see what the next generation looks like. Dr. Vivid, Krilios, Jason, Nikki, Monique, Gina, Melvin. These are the next generation of the next folks who will begin to do the work, who are doing the work now. But when it is time for us to transition and become ancestors, that the baton has been passed on into great hands. Bonita, great hands of young people who are doing the work, who are not afraid to make their voices and presence known. So that's how we begin to do the work. When you talk about passing on the baton, Dr. Vivid always makes sure her children are in spaces and places where she is. Young people see her, and those young people are exposed to a multi-generational, colorful group of people that as they see us in spaces and they understand that the work that mommy is doing and the people that she's meeting, they're the next generation. So when folks walk into spaces and they understand who we are, the next generation will love on us because they won't be jaded from those who are our forefathers. They won't have all the issues that what we went through breaking ground, they'll already be there because they'll be sitting at tables with trans folks. They'll be advocating for their lesbian moms, their gay dads, their gay uncles, their gay teachers. And they'll be like, oh, well, Timmy's mommy has 2 mommies, and they're all right with it. And for them, that's something they see every day, and it's not foreign to them. So it breaks down the barriers. And it gives us hope that if these young people get it and they understand it, those who are stuck on stupid, let them stay stuck on stupid. Because those young people and the next folks in these rooms will begin to do the work and change lives. Because as they carry that baton, they will understand the importance of the baton that was passed on to them from great hands. So when the call comes down, I don't worry about it. Allyship is important. Sometimes we got to reach out for folks who are not part of the LGBT community. And that's why allyship is important. And multi-generational, and working with folks that don't always think like me. I don't want to be in a room with everybody that thinks like me. I need somebody that has a different opinion, that's going to move me and shake me. That's why Zara shakes me in ways that I can't imagine, because young people see things that older people just don't see. And when they reach out to folks who are part of the elders and say, hey, you know what, let me look at it a little differently. Let me show you, and are willing to show you things. So then when you are ready to sit it on down, you will understand why you poured into the next generation. Because one, you listened, you heard, and you sat, and you did the work, and you exchanged values, and you poured into them so they can pour into the next generation. And that's how the work begins.
Thank you for that, Mother. Mara, can you put some other razzmatazz on that one?
Yeah, I always get to go after Rayceen. That's hard. You know, I think the one thing I would say, and then I'm going to say 3 other things. The most important thing that any queer person ever does, the most important thing that I have done, is tell my story. And y'all telling your stories. I don't mean any disrespect to HRC, but I don't mean HRC storytelling video. That's fine. That's great. That's important. But I mean, the most important thing I've done is come out to my family, to win over the people I work with, to win over my neighbors, so they see that I'm not woke, just folk. I just made that up. But you know, the storytelling is really important, and the storytelling has to be done. You have to, at the same time, understand that your cause is righteous, and our cause is so righteous. But you have to do it in a way, and we're all guilty of this sometimes, we have to do it in a way that's not self-righteous. And sometimes we're a little too self-righteous. And we have to remember that this is service. It's service to others. All I'll say about that is I'm going to quote Rabindranath Tagore, a Bengali poet. You don't hear a lot about Bengali poets in the U.S., but there's some fantastic ones. But he wrote, I dreamt and saw that love was joy. I slept and dreamt that love was joy. I awoke and saw that life was action. I acted and behold, action was joy. Service was joy. That's the kind of feeling you have to do this right. You have to understand you are a servant. You are not doing this because you get to be the CEO of something. You get to be the president of something. You get to do it because you're serving people and you're telling your story and you're winning people over. And then when you win them over, you embrace them. Too often, we win people over and say, fuck you, you weren't with us all along. We have to be embracing people. I am really always the biggest swearer on any panel. And I have toned it down dramatically over the last 5 years. But there you go. I think this is that's what I would give advice. And then one final thing, I am serving currently on the board of SAGE, which is Service and Advocacy for LGBT Elders. And I would ask our younger advocates and activists not to forget the seniors. I just turned 65, and I'm still on my own. I still have friends. I am very aware now of how hard it can be to be an LGBT senior. We're more likely to be poor. We're more likely to be alone. We're more likely to feel alone. The current administration is screwing up healthcare access. People have been used to getting their meds. That might not continue. We need to be fighting for our seniors now, not just because I am one.
Thank you for that. As you say that, I'm reminded of celebrating that Dr. Imani just opened this fabulous house for the seniors here. So we won't forget about our elders. We'll have more resources for them. And Brent.
Well, Mara, I'm going to follow up on what you said. I'm not going to do any poetry because the only one I know has a lady from Nantucket in it. But for me, I think there are two words that young people who are getting involved in nonprofits have to kind of keep at the front of their head. The first is no. It is okay to say no to things. You will get a lot of people who will demand many, many things of you, and you just can't do it. So we've seen so many, I know AIDS organizations in the 80s, many of them just kind of faltered because they kept saying yes to everything. And it's okay to say no. You have to keep the mission of your organization, always be aware of that. And that will help, kind of keep you on the level footing there. The other, kind of going to what Mara said, is to forgive. We can be our own worst enemy in our community. And we have to be willing to look at ourselves, to forgive ourselves. We have to be willing to forgive others. We have to know that people bring their own baggage to where any meeting or any kind of issue that you may have, and you don't know what they're dealing with. And it's okay to forgive. It is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's something that I struggle with every day, I can guarantee you. But I know that when I do, it makes me more effective and more empathetic towards people. And that really is how we, make our bonds that much tighter and stronger.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. And I know I can speak for myself. Getting that advice gives me hope. Knowing that there are other future leaders out there gives me hope, especially in this terrible political climate. So I would like to pose the question to our panelists. What gives you hope? And I'll start right here with Mara. What gives you hope?
I'm just a hopeful person. I think despair and cynicism are surrender. And I won't surrender. Hope, you have to have hope. There's so much to be hopeful for. I can't even start. But I think you don't have hope, find it or get out of the way. Because they're people with hope.
Yep, and let's move on down the line to Bob.
I'd say too, everything gives me hope, actually everything. Because when we have our backs against the wall, I feel like my spine and all of our spines become hard and strong. And we get way out of our shell, way out of our comfort zone. And people are emerging to become their best selves. And I think that we have been tested in American history. My parents, when I think of their lives, they went through a lot, as many of our parents did, through war, depression, a lot of demands on us as people. And to me, I think the greatest generation might become ours, because we are facing the existential issue of democracy in America, which affects everyone's lives. But every time I look around, I see fierceness, I see intelligence. I hear people, in fact, I just inspired by people I did not know had that. And I'm inspired because it's not necessarily organizational. It's actually emerging organically. And I think that's a powerful thing. People are just ready to flex and do. And I hope that they will make that, they will even defy my expectations.
All of you give me hope. All of us here give me hope. And whoever's watching, you give me hope too, because we have to really applaud ourselves. We are resilient people, all of us. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. And our community, at least in the history of the United States, has faced many horrors. If we think back, I'll just go back to the 50s. We had here in Washington, D.C., the Lavender Scare. Gay and lesbian people were getting kicked out of the federal government for being who they were. Then, we had the Mattachine Society, the Daughters of Bilitis, really trying to organize gays and lesbians. And then we had our marches to not just show that we were proud, but also to demand to be seen, to be heard, and of course the horrible HIV/AIDS epidemic that so devastated our communities, and that many of us got involved in organizing because of that, to a large extent. And then for those of us that are people of color, I'll speak about my own community, Latino community. We just wanted to organize, be visible, because we were not being heard within even our own community. So I think we've been tested a lot. And I think this is a major test, because we have never faced a government that is so hostile to us. Not just here in DC, not this federal government, but even in our states. My home state of Texas is the worst. They were using Project 2025 before the president got elected. So I think we face a lot of adversity right now, and that is why it is so important for us to stick together, come together, and just remind ourselves that we are resilient. We will get through this. It could be hard, and as I think Brent pointed out earlier, when all of us started out, we didn't have corporate donations. The federal government wasn't giving us grants for anything. We were doing it all on our own, and mostly as volunteers. So we may find ourselves again in that situation, but I think that we have to recognize that we got through it once before, we will get through it again, and this time, we're not alone as the LGBTQ plus community. We have allies, and we have to remember that, and we have to, again, stick together.
How about that? That was powerful. Well, several things give me hope. One, I see it in the young people. Our ancestors endured a whole lot, but this generation now is not having it. It's not having it. They are different kind of shake the room, kick the table, turn over the furniture kind of group. And they are going to understand that they've got to do the work even more. And when they start really shaking the rooms up the way our forefathers shook rooms up, but they're going to do it differently. Their different act of resistance and rebellion is going to be totally different. The way they show up is going to be so important, and understand why we cannot give up. What also gives me hope is today I sat with a young man, Mr. Coop, who is putting together this amazing documentary telling the story of 50 years of pride and why that is important and why our stories are important. So when young people behind us are coming out, they will understand and know the history, because they cannot say they did not know when you have a film that this young man is working on that will shake, change, move, and motivate. Third thing, that as we tell the stories, we understand that it is so important that history matters in this country, especially when they try to wipe out history, erase us from all forms of history. They will understand the importance of knowing people like Miss Majors, Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, Stormy, and so many others. And when you know the story of Pride and know it was not a party, it was an act of resistance, you know that there is hope. And you know the importance of allyship and why we have to stand more and demand more from our allies. And in this time, we are seeing those who don't use us discard us in ways. And now we see them for who we are and who they are. And when they tried to come back, we say, no, we don't want you anymore. Because you didn't want us in the hard times. We don't want you in the good times. That's why the allyship that we have today and those allies and those corporate sponsorships that rally and have stood the storm has given us hope. That they have stood the test of storm and they are in the struggle with us. And then when we come to prides and we see the parades and see all of that corporate sponsorship, we know who stood with us in the darkness. And we understand why that is so important. So that gives me hope. Knowing who my allies are. I need to know who my enemy is because I need to know where you are. So I know who you are. Show up. Know the enemy is there. But grab hands and link hands with your allies so you can fight the enemy even harder. So that gives me hope. That encourages me. All of the things that I spoke about. Hope. Standing in this space today gives me hope because I remember what this used to look like 40 years ago. This gives me hope. Standing on a corner that was sometimes not the prettiest corner in the world. How being in this space gives me hope that organizations like Whitman Walker, Capital Pride, Center of Black Equity, gives me hope that every pride that we have living in Washington, D.C., one of the most affirming cities in the world, gives me hope. That each pride has to speak and exist to speak to a group of particular people that sometimes are not always seen in every pride event. But when they're seen and celebrate within their own community, they reach out and lock hands with the other organizations and say, we have to tell our story too. But we also going to lock with you and understand that we are all in this fight together. That's the importance of why every pride matters. That gives me hope. That when we come into a city, Washington, D.C., that when people understand, why do you have several prides? Because they have to exist in order for everybody to feel seen. That it is important that we celebrate the diversity within all of our prides. All of them matter. That gives me hope.
I'm waiting for the applause. What gives me hope is that in retirement, I spent a lot of time watching social media, understanding social media. And what gives me hope is that it's not just young people who are learning how to do social media, it's everyone's learning how to do social media. And one way of looking at it is that there's too much, but you also get to measure what our people are feeling and what people are saying, what people are understanding. And As an African American, I know that the fight for civil rights for my people, which is still ongoing, 150 years after the Civil War, still ongoing, is that our population is 12% of the population. Our numbers are 12% of the population. We got civil rights because we had allies and we had people who were working with us and fought with us and marched with us and died with us. And the same call to action has to be done now. We need our allies, as has been mentioned over and over again. We can't depend just on the queer community to fight this battle, because one of the things that I've learned in the Democratic being part of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, is that we have to develop messages that people can understand and they can grasp. We have to stop always looking at identity politics and focusing on identity and focus on issues that all of us can relate. If you're talking about transgender rights are human rights. We all are human beings, and so when people start attacking transgenders, we don't have to take up the battle where transgenders have to exist. We have to say that transgenders are part of the community, the total community, and everyone in our community deserves equal rights. And I think we need to start learning how to message for social media, where people are going to spend 2 minutes looking at this particular ad or particular segment, and we need to get our messaging straight, not just about being queer, but being a human beings, being American citizens, or being human beings. Forget being American, because American citizens, being American citizen doesn't mean a whole lot these days for some populations. But we need to be clear on who we are and what we're standing for, and we need to understand what our message is, like not just as queer people, but as human beings. And I think that will start shifting the changes that we'll need over the next 4 years to survive this mess that we're in.
Yes, definitely clap for that. I got to tell you, when I first saw that question, it said, "What gives you hope?" I had to say, not much. I mean, in all honesty, I had to say that. I'm definitely an optimist. Don't get me wrong, Mara, but everything is so bleak right now. And for me, I started to think, to me, the only hope I can find really is in history. Because if you look back, I mean, we are facing, as Bob said, I think an existential threat to this nation, to our form of government, and that's going to drag everybody down. We will be, the marginalized communities will be the first to go, but we will all be dragged down. But I look back through history, and you look back at, Vanderbilt in the Gilded Age. You look back to after the Renaissance and the Medicis. You look back to the Roman times. All of these had these powerful forces that were built on nothing but greed and power. And they all fell. They all fell usually of their own accord because of their own greed and hubris. And that will happen. I just don't think you can live and exist and build a movement on greed and marginalizing people and hurting people. That will not stand. That's my only hope. And I think that we have to resist far harder than, we are doing now. I know all of us are liking, pithy comments online that are like, some kind of wordplay with Trump or something, but it's got to be more than that. And World Pride, I think, will be a golden opportunity for us to all come together as a community, as Earl said, everybody, and just say, we're not, as Rayceen said, we are not going to, I can't do it like you, but just, I feel like Diana Ross now doing this, but that that we will not put up with that. I think history will prove us, hopefully, to be true again.
Thank you for all that. Thank you. Give it a round of applause for our panelists. I feel like we've gotten so much from this conversation. You've told us to really remember who we are, to use our voices, to get help, because you can't do this alone. You've reminded us what this movement started off as and what it could be. And also, you just told us do what we're doing. I appreciate getting our flowers. Krillios got his flowers for being a part of this community. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up, but we're going to go into our favorite thing. I know Mother Rayceen's favorite thing, shameless plugs. Shameless plugs. So, panel, when I call on you, you're going to quickly tell everyone how to learn more about you and what you have upcoming. And I'll go first as an example. Hi, everyone. Again, I am Dr. Vivid. I am the Chief Inclusivity Officer for Spark DC, which is a social club, the country's first queer, non-alcoholic bar, cafe, and social club, located right on 14th and U. And we will be having an after party for all of those who want to come and join us out there. Also, I am collecting funds because as a clinician who is queer, who is Black, and is understanding every element of diversity and intersectionality, I'm raising more money to make sure that all of our youth, our elders, and anybody else from our community can continue to get mental health and wellness resources in this time of social, economical, and just we all tired. We're exhausted. So I'm trying to pour into people that way. So, and also my website is drvivid.com. Spell it all out. DOCTOR, vivid.com. Now that y'all got y'all example, who's ready to go next? And Krillios will go last.
Well, as the shameless plug.
Yes, mother.
Feel free to understand that I can be booked and available for bookings during World Pride. Feel free to reach out at me at teamrayceen@gmail.com or go to rayceen.com. That's RAYCEEN. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm available.
Let's see, what am I involved in? I'm on the board of the American LGBTQ Plus Museum, which is going to be located in New York. And our main mission is telling the history of our community in the United States. And so it's history and culture. And if you go online today to the American LGBTQ Plus Museum, you'll see that we've got online offerings. We have a monthly book club. And we also have a traveling exhibit right now that we partnered with Lambda Legal on. It's the 50 years of Lambda Legal's work called Queer Justice. And we're hoping that we can bring that to Washington, D.C. next spring in 2026. I'm also working on a book about Llegó. It was an organization that I helped co-found with Laura Esquivel over there, one of the co-founders. It was the only national Latino LGBTQ organization that existed here. It was based in Washington, D.C. From 1987 to 2004. And so that book I'm co-authoring with Dr. Lourdes Torres from DePaul University, and we hope to be completed by 2027. And I think that is it. And I'm married to the lovely Ruth Eisenberg.
I have nothing of my own to plug except for the fact that I'll turn 74 this year. So I'm excited that, and at that point, this is the point where you cut off a limb and count your own rings, right? Because that's how I know how old I am anymore. But I do want to mention an exciting project the Mattachine Society here, today's Mattachine Society is doing, honoring the nearly 50-year career of journalist Lou Chabarro, and doing a public television documentary about his life. I serve on the board of the Matthew Shepard Foundation, and of course, Lou at that time covered it like many others did, and I'm helping them archive, images and things they can use for that. So to me, telling our story 50 years later, journalists and our media matter tremendously, and so I hope that if you have a chance to watch it, support it, or just share it with others, please do.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to make another plug for Sage. First of all, Ruth, who is Lettie's spouse, is the co-chair of the board of Sage right now. But on June 21st, we're having our Sage and Friends DC event. It will be the last event where Michael Adams appears in DC. He's retiring after 20 some years with Sage. And we will be honoring Ben James Brown from Wells Fargo, a local here, and Paul Kawada. For those of you who don't know, Paul Kawada has been the executive director of the National Minority AIDS Coalition for like 2 years. No, he wouldn't like me to say how many really years, but these are really wonderful people. If you'd like to attend, please see Ruth or I. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the event, we would love that. And I know Michael would love to see all of you there. If you know Michael, you know, he's retiring. And this is the last chance to see him at an event, probably in DC. So thank you. And Paul, you know, honoring Paul and Ben James is really important.
I guess there's two things. I have the privilege of serving on the boards of the directors of 5 organizations, one of which I'm the chair, is the TKO Society down in Alabama. It's a transgender organization. They're going through their struggles like we all are, but it's the elimination of federal dollars going into that organization is really hurting the transgender community and all communities down in Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. And keep them in your thoughts, and for those organizations that are not in big cities like Washington, D.C., but who are struggling. But you know what? They're struggling, but they're holding their heads up high. They're going to work, even though they're not often getting paid regularly because of funding issues. And they're finding alternative sources of income. They have a food truck, for example, and they're going around and they're selling food in the truck to raise money for the organization. So out of tragedy, sometimes genius takes place and people reach deeply within their souls and pull out things they don't know they have. Also, DC Black Pride, which is part of the framework of World Pride, is coming up after Transgender Pride. It's a week after Transgender Pride. I believe it's May 23rd. And we're at the Capitol Hilton. The Capitol Hilton Hotel is our host hotel. And we'll be doing the DC Black Pride stuff. And everyone is welcome to DC Black Pride. It's a safe space for all members of our community. So to try a little something different, you should come to DC Black Pride. You'll enjoy yourselves.
Well, just nothing personal for me to promote, but I would encourage you. There are 40 plus different sports leagues and teams, gay sports leagues and teams in the DC area or wherever you live. Get out and play a sport, join a team, meet some other people. You'll enjoy it and you'll feel good about yourself.
Awesome. I am the founder and creative director for It's Krillious Creations. We put on stage plays, literary events, and literary workshops. If you want to find out more information, you can go to my Instagram. That is at It's Krillious, ITS. Or you can go to my Linktree. That is Linktree/It's Krillious. And while you're there, you can also buy my book, Fears, Fantasies, and Freedom. It's a 10-story fantasy anthology. It's LGBTQ. It's people of color. It's giving you everything that you've ever wanted in your life. And it is the perfect summer read. So you can find that on Linktree/It's Krillious, or you can find it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. Once again, the name of the book is Fears, Fantasies, and Freedom.
Yes, and
or you can find it at Little District Books. Yes, you are correct.
Shameless plug.
Thank you.
Yes. And please follow Capital Pride DC and World Pride DC on social media. And please join Capital Pride here again for the final panel on, is it April 22nd now? April 22nd. Panelists, thank you for joining us today. 21st. It's the 21st. I'm sorry. Are you going to go, Rob?
Yes.
Turn it over to Rob.
Just wanted to say thank you to Team Rayceen for always being a part of this. We've now had 5 Hero Series. The 6th one will be Monday, April 21st. It will be here, and some of the people on that panel are actually in this room as founders of Pride throughout the DC region. So please come back and be with us. I want to take a personal point of privilege to say thank you to everybody on the panel tonight. This is my 30th year with Capital Pride, and I would not be where I am today with Capital Pride without each of you on the panel. I know Earl and I had very serious, candid conversations when I first started, and everybody else on the panel did the same and gave feedback and a lot of advice over the years. And our organization and our community are stronger because of each of you. And everybody that has been a part of the panel has also done the same. Deacon McCubbin and Jim, I don't know where we'd be without the two of you for starting everything off with us. So excited to have you on the panel in a couple of weeks and hear your stories and your background. And please take a moment to visit Capital Pride, World Pride. Over the course of 50 years, we have honored over 150 people in our community. On June 5th, Thursday, June 5th, at the National Building Museum, we will have our honors gala where we will announce the winners from this year. We just went through a round of panel review. The nominations have been incredible. Some people that were nominated we thought had already won, and they haven't. So that tells you about the great work that's happening in DC with our LGBTQ community. We will have a lot of our youth in attendance as well. And again, Rayceen and the doctor here, the fabulous Dr. Krilios and Czar, thank you for everything that you have done behind the scenes. It is a privilege to be the Emeritus Council President as well as co-chair of this Heroes series with Christopher Dyer, who will also be on the next panel, and that will conclude our series for this year. And we really do hope that this series will continue on because there are so many stories that we need to continue to hear. And I, as I've said more than once, I believe that we've all been made for the moment that we're living in, and it's time for us to really support each other and be there in times of need and when people are struggling or they need that extra strength, that we're able to do that for each other. Because I think the times are going to be a little more challenging than we would like. And our Capital Pride, World Pride this summer will be a celebration. And it may be a protest and it may be both. But we're going to be there in mass numbers, letting our voices be heard, letting us all be seen, because we're not going anywhere. And the crusty Cheeto can do whatever he wants to. But we are going to honor our history, honor Stonewall, and let everyone know that we're not going anywhere. So with that, I just want to say thank you for everyone that has come out tonight, everyone that's joined online. We hope to see you on Monday, April 21st. And with that, hopefully you will be at the after party. And thank you for being here.
Audience, please visit the Capital Pride website to RSVP for next month and visit the World Pride DC website to learn about volunteering opportunities.
And to our viewers, thank you all for watching. Have a great evening. See you on the 21st.